Hey guys, so we're here once again. It's a brand new month once again, and it's time for, you guessed it, the monthly wrap up. All right, guys, let's just get into it. We have a lot of books to cover. I don't want to toot my own horn, but it was a great month. First up, let's get into one of my favorite reads. This I kind of started it at the end of July and I finished it in August, and it was a advanced reader's copy of Jennifer Hartman's new book, which is called Dream On. It came out on August 12th, but I was blessed to be able to read it first, and I loved it. So first off, let's kind of get into the story. The story of Dream On is essentially this girl who has dreams of making it on the big screen. She wants to be a big time actress, movie star, what have you. And then we have this boy who is already in fame. Like, he was a childhood star and now he's like still dealing with it, but he's gone through a lot of baggage that has brought him to taking like some time away from the fame and fortune of it all, and he kind of just wants to escape all that comes with fame. And they find themselves in the same small town at the same high school, and they don't really hit it off, but they kind of have to deal with each other for the sake of the musical, which is Moulin Rouge, that the high school is putting on, that they're the leads for. And that's kind of the starting point of the story, and it just kind of goes off from there. And what a story it is. With any Jennifer Hartman book, I expect a story that's going to be more unique than your average romance book. Her characters generally have baggage and trauma, which I feel is to be more relatable because that's more realistic. There's not going to be a person, especially later in life, that hasn't gone through some things when they're getting into a relationship. And her characters really show that, which I really appreciate because I don't see it very often in some romance books that isn't like super far fetched. So I really love her characters. They're very multifaceted, very diverse and complex. It makes them feel very relatable, even though what's going on in the story, I personally have never been through, and I don't see myself going through those things. But because there's such normal people with, normal problems in a way that I can see being panned out in life, makes it a lot more thrilling to see that happen in the book because I feel like it could happen in life. So yeah, I really love that aspect of it. The story is addicting as per usual. The way she even lays out the book. She lays it out with like three specific parts in the book, and they're all labeled as acts, like Act One, Act Two, Act Three, which I found was a fun little way to really tie everything together, considering it's a book about acting. They both want to be in the like acting business. So I thought that was a fun aspect, especially since they're in a play in at least Act One. So I really love the way she brings everything together, and even the small details. She never leaves anything behind. There was so much going on at one point that I was lost in it. I didn't even think about the smaller details like I usually do with other books because there was just so much to think about that there's just certain things that just kind of got left behind in my brain. But Jennifer Hartman, she is great when it comes to attention to detail. So everything that I could have thought of that would have been maybe left out in the dust because it's just such a small detail was brought up again, and those plot points were all settled, which I really appreciated. So for all of those reasons, I gave this book 5 stars. Next up, let's get into probably one of my most disappointing reads of the month. I had so many high expectations because of how highly rated this book was. But alas, it really, really disappointed me. And that book was Under Your Scars, by Ariel N. Anderson, I believe. And Yeah, let's just get into the storyline. The story is kind of all over the place, to be honest. Essentially, at its core, it's a Batman retelling, but like make it a dark romance book. That's all I have because I really couldn't pinpoint any specific plots because so much was going on, but at the same time, nothing was going on. Getting into what I disliked about this book, and that's quite literally everything. I disliked this book immensely. I hated literally all the characters for the most part. The FMC was kind of annoying. She was very childish and just didn't have a brain considering she was trying to be a lawyer. She made really poor decisions and her emotions were just kind of all over the place. I was getting whiplash from like one emotion to the next. It just it just didn't make sense. And then moving on to the MMC who straight up just was toxic in a way that I don't love in a book because you can be toxic in a book and I might love it. Usually I do love it. You can be a walking red flag in a book, just not in life.
Don't start judging me.
But this was too much to bear. At one point he's like, if you leave me, I will myself. No, that's not cute. That's highly manipulative and I don't love to see it. Not to mention this character specifically has like a split personality disorder, as what is given to us in the beginning of the book. Because, like I said, it's like Batman retelling. So he's like the silencer and also like this big CEO that has like billions of dollars. But he kind of like has conversations within himself because he sees himself as two different people. So he's got like this split personality disorder, but by the end of the book, his other personality just kind of disappears. We don't really hear much about him. Not even by the end of the book, really like by 50%. And it's just disappointing to say the least. The other thing I really disliked about the MMC is that his personality, his moral compass kind of got worse in a way that didn't make sense because in the beginning he's like, people who deserve it, the criminals. He's trying to protect the city in a way. But by the end, he's just he's just offing people left and right. Left and right.
There are no words to describe the calamitous scale of that change.
And there's one character death in there that he causes that actually makes me angry. Actually makes me angry because like there was literally no reason for it and it made me hate the MMC because I'm like how freaking dare you. Also, the dad, the FMC's dad, his character made no sense. Um, because he's supposed to be like a family man because of like the trauma in his past is that his whole family essentially got murdered. So his wife and his two daughters got murdered. Um, and he's never been really the same since then. But he has his new family. The FMC is his daughter, and he has another son and a wife, and he's happily married, whatever. So he's like a family man. But the way the book ends, and I'm not going to spoil it, but the way the book ends really makes no sense to me. And the only thing I enjoyed about this book was the shock value of the twist at the end. And I didn't really enjoy it. I was thoroughly pissed off the way everything happened. And like I said, there's not really like a plot for me. Like nothing really I there's nothing I could really pinpoint on this being the essential plot because we were going from one thing to the other, but none of them were linear. None of the things were linear. Nothing really tied together nicely. It was just kind of a lot of random things thrown in. And a lot of people were like crying at the end. And I was like, I'm not shedding any tears. I'm actually the most infuriated I've ever been when finishing a book. I thoroughly thought that there was literally no point to the book. There was no point for me starting to ending. I thought I'd get some type of closure at the end, which is why I pushed through, because by the halfway point, I really wasn't enjoying myself. But I was like, I wanted to see where this ends. And I'm mad that I just didn't DNF it in the beginning because it was not worth it. So for all of those reasons, I gave this book 2 stars. And the only reason I gave it 2 stars is because I generally don't like to give books 1 star because it does take a lot to write a book and get it published. So I always give authors 2 stars for that. But I hated this book. I want to make that clear. Next up, let's talk about Anna Wong's If Love Had a Price. And I believe this is the third book in that series. And I'm going to start off by saying that I originally started the series like, I want to say like in January. I read the first 2 books and the fourth book, and I decided to skip over this one because I just wasn't sure if I wanted to read it because it didn't really interest me, and I didn't really like that character. But I put a hold on the Libby app for the audiobook in February, and I just got it. So I decided, why not? Let's get into it. And you know what? I'm mad at myself because I actually really enjoyed this book. Now, this book is about the heiress of the group that you see in the first book of the series. And the heiress, she learns that her father is getting married to essentially this woman she believes to be a gold digger. And she wants to keep this marriage from happening. So she hires an actor, so someone who's trying to be an actor. She hires an actor to try to seduce her dad's fiance, and then so she can like catch them in the act, so she can show her father how bad of a person he's going to be marrying. Yeah, so that's the story essentially, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. I really loved the FMC and the MMC's chemistry. It just kind of flew off the page, so to speak, since I listened to this book. It was addicting. I really loved their relationship and their dynamic. The banter was really cute, and I just enjoyed every moment of their interactions together. I loved how opposite they were and how those opposites really played a part in the building of the relationship. It was good. One thing I really, really, really disliked was the MMC's self-sacrificing personality. It was frustrating at times because I'm like, dude, let her decide, but it's fine, I guess. I mean, it really created a miscommunication between the two often when Mans was trying to be so self-sacrificing, words, and it really threw me off because I just wanted him to get over it. And that's a personal thing. Like some people might not have an issue with that, but I was just getting so angry at him that it really took away from my love of the book. Just was not a great time. So, um, but that was it. But that was it. I gave this book 4.5 stars. And I think this book was honestly my favorite out of that entire series. So, again, kicking myself for waiting so long to read it. Moving on to Keep Me by Sarah Kate. Now, this one I had mixed emotions with, but let's get into the story of it all. So essentially, there's this guy who lives in this house, like his family home, and he owns the house since his parents passed. And his family doesn't really love that he just stays in this house all the time and what he does in this house. And there's like this little tidbit in the will that says that if he gets married and he's married for a year, the rights of the house go to the wife essentially. So she owns the house. So they're trying to get him out of the house by taking the house from him, but the only way to do that is to find a wife for him to take it from him. Now, he agrees to a marriage because they say if you get married for a year, we'll get off your back. He's like, fine. The girl who he ends up marrying absolutely despises him, but she is down on her luck. She doesn't have any money. Her parents cut her off, and all of her credit cards are maxed out. She doesn't really have a lot of options as far as money goes. So she agrees to marry him for like millions of dollars by the end of this year, and she'll sign over the rights of the house to his family to get him out of this house. So that's essentially the plot of the book, and yeah, the only pro to this book that I have is the MMC. I disliked him in the beginning. He's very off-putting. He's very rude. He says some not so nice things to the FMC. But after like a little bit of time, he falls in love with her, and he falls in love with her. Like the whole she fell first, but he fell harder. He falls harder. And the way that he loves her and all of his POVs gave me life. It gave me life. But that's about it. That's all that I really loved about this book. The FMC, she was annoying from literally chapter one. I disliked her. And that's got to be some type of record because I have never viscerally hated someone from chapter one. But this one takes the cake. I dislike this FMC because she was so childish. She was selfish. She was very self centered. I couldn't root for her. And there were certain points in the book that I just didn't understand her reasoning. Like she set herself up for failure a lot of the times. At one point, they're like playing spin the bottle, and she gets mad, even though she's the one who suggests this game. She suggests the game, and she gets mad that her husband participates in the game. I was like, if you didn't want to see him kiss anyone, why would you suggest this game? Doesn't make any sense. Like, just all of her actions in the book really put me off. And then his family, the way they, go about this whole taking the house from him, I didn't like. Her parents are really trash. And the ending with her parents, A, didn't make sense to me. And B, just why? I could have gone without the ending with her, like her relationship with her parents. I could have gone without that being settled in a way. It was unnecessary. So yeah, all of that I just didn't vibe with this book. So I don't know if I'm going to continue with Sarah Kate because the last books that I read by Sarah Kate were the anti-hero and the other books in that series. I don't remember what that whole series is called, but I dislike those with a passion. And this one was my next try with Sarah Kate, and I really didn't love this book. So I may be giving up on Sarah Kate. Unless you guys have any recommendations for Sarah Kate books, I may just have to say Sarah Kate books are just not for me. But anyways, I gave this book 3.5 stars, and that's purely just because of the MMC, because I adored him. I adored him and his love for the FMC. Even though I didn't understand the love for the FMC, I loved that he loved her. So that's why. All right, let's talk about the next book, which is a book that I didn't have high or low hopes for. This author has kind of taken a turn in the book world, but I have enjoyed the two previous books I had read from her, so I didn't let the negative stuff come in, but oh my gosh, I wish I did.
Yeah, I have regrets.
And that book is Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. And this book, I really couldn't really pinpoint um like the whole plot because it was very shallow. The plot at its core is about a woman who is a nurse working on her master's degree. She moves in with her brother, who was a pilot, and she runs into her brother's neighbor, who is also a pilot, who has a lot of emotional trauma and a lot of emotional baggage. And somehow, some way, they come up with this agreement to take the relationship to the next level, i.e., just purely physical. They don't want to be friends or really romantically involved to the point of they could be in love type of thing, just purely physical. And that's more on his end. And my oh my, let's talk about the cons. Now, I had many issues with this book. First off, the characters. I thought all of them were annoying, insufferable characters for the most part. There was maybe like one or two characters that weren't super annoying, but for the most part, all of them really rubbed me the wrong way. The FMC in particular, who is supposed to be, an adult, acts very childish. She likes to think that she can fix this man who has repeatedly told her that he cannot love her for his own issues, whatever. But she keeps going into this relationship knowing she's probably going to get hurt multiple times. He does multiple bad things to her. And she's like, oh, it's fine. And at one point, she even says that, like, if like if any of like my friends would have told me about a man who was doing these things to them, I'd be like, get rid of him. Like, but I find myself making excuses for him. I'm like, why? Why are you making excuses for this man? He's not a good guy. I didn't understand her reasoning. And not to mention, the whole thing with this relationship, I I was having a hard time understanding why she was getting feelings for this man. They barely spent any time together, let alone like talk. They barely talked, and somehow, some way, she was falling in love with him. Like when? How? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Something's not adding up here.
Now, with this MMC, there were quite a bit of flashbacks to his past to really understand his character and why he is the way he is in adulthood. So the flashbacks were happening when he was like in high school, like senior year of high school. And I understand that the chapters are in the perspective of a 17 to 18-year-old boy. But the way these flashbacks were written was very juvenile. It felt like an actual child, not like a teenager. It felt like a child wrote these chapters. And I couldn't wrap my head around the amount of repetitive name dropping. He had to have said his love interest in the past, Rachel, like a trillion times in those chapters. It it felt like when you're watching a Quentin Tarantino movie and how many times they throw an F bomb in there. It felt like that. Like I feel like if I was doing a drinking game and the one word that I would be drinking to is every time Colleen Hoover mentioned Rachel, I'd been I'd be done out by the first, I'd say maybe 3 chapters. I was tired of hearing this woman's name. But I digress. It was just not for me. The FMC, she had the lowest of standards. I was gobsmacked with the amount of times she was admiring any of the men in her life, the love interest and her brother or any other male who had did the smallest of things and was like, "Oh my gosh, he's such a great guy." The low standards, I couldn't get over them. I was like, why are we, these is the bare minimum. Why are we preaching the awesomeness of these characters for literally the smallest of things? No. No, we rebuke that. No. And so, for all of those reasons, I gave this book 2 stars. And that's right. There were no pros to this book. I didn't mention a pro because there were no pros. I did not enjoy myself. 2 stars. Now, let's get into a book that was actually recommended to me by a colleague of mine who is super into thrillers. And she's like, you have to read Lisa Jewell. and I happen to have a Lisa Jewell book. I believe I got it from Book of the Month, and so I was like, all right, I'll throw it up my TBR. And you know what? I'm so happy I did, because the book we're talking about, we're I'm talking about, is Lisa Jewell's None of This Is True. And oh my gosh. So it's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around this plot, but the plot essentially is these two women share the same birthday. They are both turning 45 on the same day, and they happen to be at the same restaurant on the same day. And one of them is in a not so great relationship with her husband. They've been together for decades at this point, and she's just not happy. And the other woman is in a well, yes, happily married coupling, and she's a successful podcaster, whatever. And the other woman kind of envies her. So she seeks her out and talks her into essentially making a podcast about this woman's life and how things are going to turn around for her. And it was riveting. Now, what did I love? Oh my gosh, what didn't I love? I listened to this book. I listened to the audiobook, and if I was to suggest anything about reading this book, I'd say listen to it. Don't pick it up and read it. I mean, you can if you want to, but the audiobook is phenomenal. I don't think I've ever listened to an audiobook that had me so enraptured before. So the audiobook was just so great. They have a full cast, sound design, the whole shebang, and it really draws you into the story. Now, the essentially the things that I really loved about this book, other than the audiobook, was the setup of it all. Because like I said, the one of the FMCs, she is a podcaster. And the way this book is set up is like a podcast. It's like the unfolding of like a true crime podcast that you're listening to. And I loved that I was feeling like I was actually listening to a podcast instead of just like being read a story. It the amount of love I have for this book right here. And then not only that, the twist at the end had me questioning so many things. And I love that about a thriller book. That really makes or breaks a thriller, makes or breaks a thriller for me. Is if the twist is good. If the twist is like subpar and I saw it coming, then obviously I'm not having a good time because I feel like I wasted my time on a book. Because that's the thing about thrillers, they're all about the twists and the turns, and if you can see them coming. And this one I didn't see coming. I mean, like you know what's going on, but like you don't know what's going on. And not only that, the way this was written, because yes, it sets you up in like a podcasting format, but the POVs, because you're not just staying in one POV, you're staying in multiple POVs, the two FMCs mainly. And the degradation of the one of the FMC's psychosis and the other one's like paranoia, like her increasing paranoia, really sets the tension of the story. And like I said, it was riveting. I could not stop listening. It was very hard for me to essentially put this down. So, because of all of those reasons, I gave this book 5 stars. All right, next up, this was kind of like a spookier read for me. I was getting ready for fall, and this book happened to be on my shelf and available on Libby, so I thought I'd listen to it. And that book was Starling House by Alex E. Harrow. Yes, Alex E. Harrow. And this one was interesting. Now, the plot of this book is interesting. The FMC, she's kind of down on luck. She's working hard to make as much money as she can. She's trying to make money in all forms, trying to work for it and then also stealing it, stealing things to sell, to get money, to essentially send her brother off to private school to get him out of this hellhole town and out of this life that she doesn't want for him. And then we have this house that has kind of like an ominous history with the town. There's been multiple owners, and all of them have died suspiciously. Currently, there is an owner whose parents had owned it before him, but they have also passed away. And she finds herself kind of being the housekeeper for this house to again gain money, and the man who runs the house, i.e. the son of the two parents that passed away previously, has a very interesting relationship with this house as well. Now that's all I'm really going to say because that's essentially the plot. So, let's get into some of the pros. Now, I would definitely say this is more of like a gothic fiction book, with like a very, very, very small subplot of romance. And that was good. It was fine. I enjoyed that aspect of it. I really love the lore of it all, the house and its history, because we do get to see the multiple owners of the house and what drove them to the house and just kind of like the background, and loving the different ideas of the house and all of the residents, because there's a lot of theories about what goes on at this house. So hearing everyone's tales and then finally learning the truth and how often on point people were with the house, that was very interesting. And then the MMC himself is also a very unique character. Uh, and his growing infatuation with the FMC is very endearing. And yeah, I really loved him specifically, the MMC, and the lore of the house. But let's get into the cons. Now, I don't think I would have been able to finish this book if I wasn't listening to it, because the first 50% of the book is so slow for it essentially is a like character driven story and not so much a plot driven story, and it shows. It's hard to get through. There's a lot of detail that I didn't feel was really necessary at points, and it just really dragged on that first 50%. I thought about DNFing it for a while because it was hard to get through. But after you get to a certain point and it really starts to kick up, it's really enjoyable, and I'm happy I was able to finish it because I really enjoyed where it went. It was just so hard to get there it initially. So if you were to read this book, I'd say definitely do the audiobook, cuz you're going to have a hard time getting through the physical book. And then the FMC, she was very annoying. I didn't really like her and her attitude towards a lot of things. She was very selfish. And you're like, well, she's doing all this to get her brother out of this crappy town. How can she be? She is very selfish. She keeps a lot of things to the chest for her own self interest, even including with her brother. So she's holding on to him, gripping onto him with all that she has, and it's kind of suffocating to read. Um, but anyways, her character was very hard to like. And then the lack of communication of it all, I was having a hard time getting through it because of the lack of communication. I have said this once and I'll say it a million times. The miscommunication trope is absolutely my least favorite trope. I think it should go die. I hate the miscommunication trope with a burning passion, and it was definitely used in here multiple times. And I wish it wasn't. I wish it wasn't. I think I would have enjoyed it a lot more if there was more communication between all of the characters, the FMC, the FMC's brother, the MMC. Like there's just so many points in the plot where I was like, this could have just all been cleared up with a cute little conversation, honest and open would be nice. But Alas, no. And then the last thing I would say about this book, that I really didn't love was the unanswered questions. There were a couple things that I just didn't get settled on. One specific character is kind of in the wind, and I don't know exactly what happens to that character, but I would like to because they play such a such a large villainous role in this book, and I don't feel like I got a lot of clarity on that character. So yeah, I didn't really enjoy that portion. But overall, I gave this book 3.5 stars and probably could have made that a little lower, but again, the last 50% really drove me to finish it because I really enjoyed it. So, yeah. Next up, I have a book that I had very high hopes for because I really loved a book that this author had written beforehand, and it kind of let me down. And that book is Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. And let's get into the plot. Now, the plot of this book is basically about a woman who has taken custody of her sister, her baby sister, because her mom has had abuse issues. Her biological mom, she's been adopted, so she just has little contact with her biological mother, and she finds out that her biological mother has had a baby. And so she takes on the responsibility of being her sister's guardian. And in order to do these things, because she's freshly graduated out of college, she has to do this program where she essentially homes someone else who is trying to take care of someone in the foster care system. And that's only because she can't prove that she can afford to take care of the child. So her roomie is someone who just can't take care of the housing issue. And so they're they're a pair and they become roomies, and that's the plot. Now, the largest pro that I have for this book, or maybe the only pro I have, is that the groundwork was laid. I think it was done really well. Everything was set up in a way that it was interesting. The premise was good, solid foundation. But let's get into the cons. Now, considering both all of the characters for the most part, the both the MMC and the FMC are both from the foster care system. They both have gone through a lot of traumatic situations. You would think that they would have a lot more depth, but they did not. I was lacking any connection with the characters because I didn't really see what they had been through, and they didn't really talk about what they had been through much. Um, and that really played a part in me liking the characters at all. And not only that, is that almost immediately they become a couple. It doesn't take much. It's insta love for sure, and they don't even go on their first date before they say I love you. And I hate that.
Oh, not a fan.
I hate that. The characters need to have some type of connection or slow burn, some tension. That's what this book was meant me words missing. They were missing tension because you think since they live together, there'd be some close contact, close proximity, and there'd be these moments where like you come close to, kissing or whatever, but there was never really a lot of that. It was just kind of boring in a way. And then there was also the fact that a lot of the plot points didn't really feel natural in the progression of the story. It felt more like a plot point. It felt like the author just needed to continue the story instead of, naturally building the story, if that makes sense. I just had a hard time understanding why we went in certain directions. And funnily enough, usually I say that books are too long and they could have been cut shorter. This book right here, she was short. She definitely could have been longer. It could have used a lot more to really help with the story and the characters. I didn't love it. So I gave this book 3.25 stars, and yeah. I'll give Hannah Bonham Young another shot, but this one just wasn't for me. All right, next up, I have a set of books that I will be talking about all together because they are a continuation. So, first book, second book, third book are just the continuation of the same story. We're following the same characters. So, I really won't be talking much about the second and third book in the series because I don't want to spoil anything. But yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So, I read Assistant to the Villain as like a reread and Apprentice to the Villain again as a reread to get ready for Accomplice to the Villain, which came out at the beginning of this month. And well, beginning of July. And it's by Hannah Nicole Mayer. And may I say, I love this series.
I love it.
Now, the plot of this book series, well, in the first one, anyways, is a girl who is struggling to find a job after losing her last one, after having a altercation with her boss. And she's like the breadwinner. She's the one who supports her family because her sister is still in school. She's a kid, and her father has like this mystic illness is what they call it, so he really can't work, so she supports her father and her sister. And she finds herself after a job hunt going through the forest and happens upon this man in need of help, and he is the villain. He is called the villain by everyone in the kingdom, and he essentially is a villain to everyone. He's seen as a villain, he does villainous things, and he offers her a job as his assistant because she needs a job. And as she has not a lot of options, she agrees. And that's kind of where the story goes. It's just her being the assistant to the villain and all that entails. Now, I love all of these books. I mean, I love some of them more than others, but the first book specifically, Assistant to the Villain, very fast paced. All the characters are very unique, and there's never a dull moment. I love this book specifically, Assistant to the Villain, because there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. I was intrigued the entire time. I mean, look at the tabs, to say the least. I loved the quirkiness of all of the characters, all of the random things, the banter between the villain and the FMC Evie. It's such a fun time, and it's like a fantasy, and you got like the world building. Oh, just all of it, so good. And then you move on to Apprentice to the Villain, which still has a lot of those quirky characters, and we still get a fast-paced story, lots of things happening, and yeah, I love this one as well. The only thing different, which I think was really good to see, were the multiple kind of POVs. Because we only really see Evie's point of view in the first book. So we get to see more characters' POVs in this one, and it's a fun time. It's a fun time. Like I said, I think the only thing I had an issue with was the miscommunication trope in this one. It was used heavily. The first time around, I believe I rated this book a 4 because of it, but that went up after my reread with the audiobook, just because I saw what was coming, so it didn't irritate me as much. And then Accomplice to the Villain. This was really good. I am quite upset that I have to wait however long for the next book to come out because it was so good. Again, we get these quirky characters. We get We get all of the good banter. We get all of the storyline. This round, yeah, this round, words. This round, we get more of kind of a differentiation between the multiple characters. So all of them are kind of going on their own journeys. They kind of split up at a certain point, which we do see a little bit in Apprentice to the Villain, but we see it a lot in Accomplice to the Villain, which I really love to see the different kind of avenues each character goes in their journeys. And we get a lot more answers to questions and we get to see some relationships flourish. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one so much. So much. It's just so whimsical. It's just such a fun read. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. So for I'll do this backwards. So for Accomplice to the Villain, I gave this 4.75 stars. And for Apprentice to the Villain, I gave this book initially 4 stars. Second round, I gave it 4.5 stars for my reread. And Assistant to the Villain, I gave this one 5 stars. Now, if you're looking for a cute romantasy, essentially, but like really low on the romance is truly the subplot here. I'd say pick this up. It is just such a fun time, and yeah, you're gonna really fall in love with the characters because I certainly have. But yeah, definitely worth your time. All right, next up, I got into a standalone series and I decided to put my whole heart in it because the third book and final book in the series is coming out in July, in the beginning of July. So I was in. I was in and I had owned these books, so I was like, let's do it. And so the first book in this standalone series is Truly Madly Deeply by LJ Shen. And yeah, I had high hopes because I love LJ Shen books. Now, essentially the plot of this book is this girl who's best friends with this other girl is leaving for college and she's very close with her best friend's older brother. And so she kind of bargains with the older brother to lose her V card before she goes off to school. She kind of has this fear of men, and the only person she feels safe with is this older brother. So she kind of wants to move forward with those physical acts before diving into college. Although she knows that her best friend is not a fan of anyone lusting after her older brother. So her best friend finds out about this whole thing and cuts her off. So yeah, she doesn't really have any contact with either the older brother or the best friend for a few years. I believe maybe like 5 years or something like that when she has to come back into town. Um, and she is thrown back into these relationships and what that all means with rekindling her friendship with her ex best friend and maybe building a relationship, a romantic one, with the older brother. Now, things that I really enjoyed about this book was the fact that I loved how much the MMC was obsessed with this FMC. He loved her from moment one. There's not a inkling of a thought that was like maybe he doesn't feel strongly for no. He loved her. He loved her and I loved that love. He was just so obsessed. He was so obsessed and he was so delusional to think that he could ever ever let those feelings go for her. And I really love seeing that. The banter, oh, that is one thing Aljay Shen knows how to do is banter because it's so funny. Oh my gosh, I was dying, kicking my feet, laughing so hard because her banter for her characters is just so witty and just so funny. I just love reading LJ Shen's banter. Another thing I really enjoyed about this book is that it kind of sets up the characters for the next books that were in the series without taking away from any of the main couple's story, which that can be a real issue for some books, whether they focus too much on what's coming next instead of what's happening in the present, i.e., the present story. So I really appreciated that it was handled with care, introducing the other characters. So yeah, I really liked that. Now some cons. I was very irritated with the FMC at times because she just refused to kind of see her feelings. She just refused that she had feelings. And this went on for far too long. And it was frustrating to read because, like I said, the MMC, he's obsessed. He's obsessed from moment one. We all see it. But the FMC being so deep in denial was really killing me. I was not having a good time at all. So yeah, I didn't love that. And then another thing is that the MMC, he's got big dick, okay? Yeah, he does. And their spicy scenes weren't very, sexy. They weren't very cute because it just seemed very uncomfortable. Their sexy scenes. So that made me not have a good time while reading them. So yeah, I like we love to see it in a book, but yeah, I like being delusional. I'm like, yeah, that'll fit. That'll fit. Yeah. But her being very realistic with it, I was like, okay, I'm not enjoying myself. I'm like, okay, we get it, it's uncomfortable. We get it. We get it. We get it. But like, I want delusion. I don't want realism when it comes to this, when it comes to the smutty scenes.
What am I missing? Am I crazy?
But anyways, all of those reasons, I gave this book 4 stars. All right, next up, let's get into the next book in the standalone series, and that is Wildest Dreams by LJ Shen. Obviously, it's the next book in the series, and this one, this one was good. I enjoyed it actually more than the previous book. Now, this book follows the best friend from the first book, and then the best friend of the MMC, also in the first book. And it's more of like a fake dating trope because he is trying to get this app off the ground, and the person who would invest all of their money into his app is a family man. And this guy, the MMC, is very much known for not being a family man. He's actually infamous for being kind of like an escort. He's an escort. And the FMC, she's got a kid, and she's a single mother. She's trying to deal with things, and so she's trying to figure out her life and how to move on with her future. And so they kind of make a deal. He's going to pay her to pretend to be his his fiance. And yeah, that's the plot line, and oh my gosh, I loved it. Now, like I said, with every LJ Shen book, I am laughing out loud with the banter, and this was no exception. This was a hilarious book. I enjoyed every minute of it. The banter, fantastic. I really love the MMC's evolution from like where he was in the beginning of the book, or even in the previous book. He was kind of just like this bachelor, living his best life, and seeing his evolution to becoming more careful with how he sees things and how he's treating even her kid, his evolution to becoming kind of like a stepfather figure was so fun to see, and I really enjoyed his evolution. It was slow moving, but once he got to it, it was so good, and you could see how much he cared for not just her, the FMC, but also her daughter became very essential in his life. Another thing I'd say is the pacing of this book was pretty solid. I never felt like it was dull. The last 30% of this book, though, had me in a chokehold. Absolute chokehold. I could not put it down. I think I had gotten to like the last 30% late at night, and I planned to go to bed at a certain time. I ended up going to bed at like, I don't know, like 2 o'clock in the morning just to finish it because it was so good. I was on edge. All right, so some of the cons of this book, I really became frustrated with a lot of these characters' decisions. Certain characters were making some choices, like not even just the MMC, but like all of them, the side characters and the characters you've seen previously in the other books. Like they were all making choices that heavily impacted all of the characters that I did love. Like they all impacted them negatively, and I was having a hard time not wanting to climb into this book and strangle all of them. It was very infuriating. So, yeah, that was one of my cons. Another con is that I wish we would have gotten a little deeper into the MMC's past because he has some issues with like his parents and everything, and we see a little bit of that, but we don't get to see any more. I would have liked to go a little deeper into his character to really understand how he became the way he is. At one point he mentions like a necklace that like he doesn't take off like ever, and he had said it was like something that his grandpa gave him and they were really close, but this is the first time I've ever heard of this grandpa. And yeah, I was like, that was just such an offhanded comment. I wish we would have seen this relationship with the grandfather. We would have seen him develop some sort of, you know, familial love, familial connection with this other person that we really didn't get to see because his past is what made him who he was. And I would like to see how we got there, essentially. So, because of that, I gave this book 4.5 stars because, again, I really loved it. All right, last but certainly not least in this standalone series, I have Handsome Devil here. And yeah, let's just get into it. Now, this book follows kind of like the big bad, kind of, from the first book and the second book. He is a huge investor, like a billionaire who will practically step on anyone and everyone to get his way. He just wants to win, and he has invested in projects from the first book and the second book, the MMC's projects. And so we kind of get some insight into his character. And so his assistant, who he pays handsomely to be his assistant, who he treats like kind of trash because he just asks a lot of her. As I said, he's not the greatest of guys. So she is having a dilemma. Her mother has dementia, and she wants to get her mom into this study where they've found good things to come from dementia patients. So she wants to get her mom into this study so her mom can possibly get better, just like to lose some of those symptoms from dementia because she really misses her mom and her mom is all she has left. So she has made a deal with the devil, her boss, to basically do anything to get her mom into this study. And this man is like, okay, fine, I will get your mom into that study if you marry me. So she's like, okay. So she ends up marrying him, and that's kind of where this story goes. It's just them in their not so marital bliss, and things happen in this book. It's kind of like a darker turn because there's some murder in there. Yeah, there's some darker tendencies in this book, and there's a mafia that has to be dealt with, and a whole bunch of things. I really enjoyed Tate's backstory, the MMC's backstory. I love seeing this other side of him, this more vulnerable side of him, and to see how he became this evil human who literally cares about no one. And it was really, really endearing to see him kind of grow up and all of the traumas that he'd faced to get him to this point. So I really had a deeper understanding of his character, and I really love seeing that. And like I said, with LJ Shen, I love the banter, and this one again, no different. So really love the banter for them as well. However, now the FMC was a tad bit annoying in that she was very hypocritical. Like, she was doing things and demanded things of him that she was not giving in return. And to a point where I was like, why? And then she got mad at him for not doing these things. And I'm like, I don't know what you're expecting here, ma'am. It just became very frustrating to root for her when I was like, you need to at least meet him halfway. Please. Please. And then not only that, some of the bigger events happened very quickly, a little too quickly. I would have liked to have those events expanded on and just to kind of build up some of that tension and the excitement of things that could go wrong. And I don't know, just it felt a little, it fell a little flat for me for those bigger events. And then lastly, I know a lot of romance books in general can be predictable, and I'm fine with that because it's about the journey, not the destination. But in this case, the destination was plain to see, and so was the journey. I really didn't love the predictability of it all. I saw all of it coming, all of it. Not a single thing was a surprise to me. Um, there was like a slight like plot twist. Well, it wasn't really a plot twist. It's more like expanding on their deeper connection between the FMC and the MMC, which was fun. But I guess I didn't see that coming. But everything else, according to like the actual plot, was very predictable. And I wish we would have had a little more creativity with it, something to like throw me off. So yeah, because of all those reasons, I gave this book 4 stars. All right, guys, next up, let's go ahead and get into one of the arcs that I got this month to read, and that arc is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. So, this book is a little hard to explain. Um, Basically, there's a bunch of gods and goddesses, and there's kind of like a hierarchy system for these gods and goddesses. You can move up and down in this hierarchy depending on how brutal you are for power, essentially. But the premise of this book is following one little goddess. She is the child of 2 gods, and she is the herald. So she basically can send messages in between any of the realms. She's the only one who has access to all realms. But she finds herself kind of entwined, like her destiny is entwined with this little human boy. And that's kind of like the premise of the book because it's really just about them and their journey. Something I really loved about this book was the fact that it's truly an adventure. There's lots of hoops to be jumping through, lots of obstacles to have to overcome. I really enjoyed the fact that it was it was a journey in itself. It was giving kind of like Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, because there was a lot going on.
I'm going on an adventure!
Another thing I really liked about this book is that the building words, the world building was quick and efficient, in my opinion. I think it was easier for me to grasp because I had already read the Letters of Enchantment series, the duology, which is Divine Rivals and Ruthless Vows. And this Wild Reverence book is a prequel to that story, but it happens like so far in the past.
I promise. It happened so long ago.
There is some crossover, which is really cool to see, but I think if you read the Letters of Enchantment series, the world building is much easier to grasp, and that's why I think it's quick and efficient because I did read that duology before getting into this book, and I kind of knew some of the gods already, so I was already a little familiar with the story. So I think it was done well, in my opinion. I did have one issue with this book, and it was the fact that there were still some questions I had by the end of it. I didn't feel fully satisfied for a few of the characters' storylines. There is a little open ended for some of those characters, which would be fine if you don't mind like open endings. But I am a girly who loves closure. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but overall, I really enjoyed the book. I think it was written very well. Rebecca Ross has a way with words, and it's quite impressive. I really do enjoy her writing style. But for all of those reasons, I gave this book 4.5 stars, and you'll be able to actually read this too because it comes out September 2nd, so just like a day away. So you can have your hands on this right away. Next up, the book I read was People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. And yeah, let's get into it. The plot of the book is basically there's these two people, they're like best friends, and they spend every summer together. They just are really close and they like to go on vacation. So they go to like different places together every summer, except for like 2 summers ago was when this like starts out. 2 summers ago, the FMC and the MMC, they get into some type of argument. We don't know. And they've kind of lost touch. But there has been an opportunity for her to take him on another vacation for the summer. So she kind of wants to rekindle that love for traveling that she once had by inviting him on this trip and rekindling that friendship as well. So that's the premise of this story. For the prose for this book, as always, I love the banter. Emily Henry has a way with dialogue. She is so hilarious. I did find myself laughing out loud throughout this entire book. Her characters are also well developed, so that's great. And then the friends to lovers. The friends to lovers aspect of this book is is good. It's done well. I usually don't like friends to lovers because of the usual miscommunication trope that is hand in hand with the friends to lovers trope. And everyone knows I hate miscommunication trope. But this one wasn't too bad because they didn't really have like it wasn't obvious. It wasn't obvious that they had feelings for one another until like we get further into the book. So it wasn't distressing to me. It didn't irritate me as much. So that was definitely done well. As far as the cons go, this book was very slow. I had a hard time getting through it at times because I was just bored. I I mean, I love the characters and I love the situations, but I was ready to be done at a certain point. And the way this book is set up is that we get a lot of flashback chapters. Like we get to see the previous summers before the one that like breaks them up. And I could have done with at least half less. Like there was like maybe six flashback chapters too many. I didn't need it. I didn't need it. And there were points when we were going back in time, like a flashback chapter, when I only wanted to be in the present. I was like, no, 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 I want to stay here. But then we ended up doing a flashback chapter, and I was like, okay, Okay, I mean, granted, the flashback chapters definitely helped with the development of the characters, but again, could have done with at least six less of those. I was done.
I am so done with you.
The push and pull towards the end really frustrated me because I just didn't understand it. It didn't make any sense to me why the characters were doing slash saying the things that they were towards the end. It just, yeah, it kind of let me down. So for all of those reasons, I gave this book 3.5 stars, and I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I had listened to this book instead of physically read it, because yeah, it was just really slow, and with audiobooks you can just increase the pacing, and I think that would have really helped me out here. But yeah. All right, next up, I have The Nothing Man by Catherine Ryan Howard. And I want to start out by saying that when I picked this book up, I thought I was reading a romance. And when I look at this cover now, I realize it's definitely a thriller, which it is. But I was given this book by someone who reads mostly romance, so I just assumed it was romance when I picked it up. Boy, was I wrong. I was definitely wrong. But let's get into it. The premise of this book is a serial killer. He is basically retired now. He killed a few people. He terrorized this whole town of Cork in, I believe it's the UK. Maybe I don't know. Ireland? I think it's Ireland. Cork, Ireland. That sounds right. Um, but he terrorized Cork for a few years, and he's now retired. It's been like 20 years since he has killed anyone, terrorized anyone. But he's in the grocery store and he's just browsing and he sees this book and it's called The Nothing Man. And The Nothing Man was his pseudonym back in his heyday. And he picks it up and he realizes it is a survivor of one of his more gruesome killings, and she wrote a book about him. So he picks it up and he starts reading through it, just trying to relive his glory days. But we're also getting like present time as well of the victim and what she's doing and how she's trying to find him, because it's an ongoing investigation. They still haven't found him. So that's the premise of the book, and it was good. It was interesting. I thought this was such a fun approach to a thriller. Being able to see like the serial killer's point of view on top of like the victims and everything, like just getting that like back and forth between like the present and the past and just all of that. It was an interesting and unique approach to this type of book. One thing I would say against it is it wasn't really like thrilling. I wasn't really on the edge of my seat. It was all kind of predictable to me, which was usually it's a bad thing for a thriller to be predictable, but in this case, it was just entertaining. I would kind of say it's similar to maybe watching a documentary of a very well-renowned serial killer, you know, like you know what's going to happen. You already know the ins and outs of probably the ins and outs of the case itself because it's so well known. So it's like that. I don't want to say enjoying, but you're like getting that entertainment from like learning all about this crazy person who decided to go off and start murdering people. So that's kind of like what I would say it's similar to. Like it was still interesting, but again, not thrilling, if that makes sense. But I gave this book, The Nothing Man, 4 stars because again, it was still a solid read. Next up, I read Melanie Harlow's Runaway Love. It's the first book in the Cherry Tree Harbor series, and it was good. All right, the premise of the book is this girl who basically is a runaway bride. She doesn't go through with her wedding, and now she has nothing. She lived with her fiance. She basically didn't have a job, anything. She just kind of lived off of him because he was rich and he didn't want her to work. So when she leaves him, she has literally nothing, just a suitcase of stuff that she came to this cute little town with where they were planning on getting married. So she finds herself with not a lot of options, but this town is super cute and they all kind of pull together to help her find a job, which this job is being a nanny for this single dad in town who is in need of a nanny after his sister bails on him last minute. So that's basically the premise of the book. She just is this single dad's nanny, and that's where it takes off. Now, I liked the character's development. I think it was done well. The pacing was great. And at first, I didn't really enjoy the yearning. There wasn't really a lot of yearning in the beginning, but like maybe in like the 60 to like 80% mark, like in between that, there was a lot of yearning going on. And I loved that. I ate that up. It was great.
Delicious.
Now, big shocker here. My biggest and only con for this book was the miscommunication trope. I don't know how many times I have to say it, but I quite literally cannot stand that trope. And when it is used and done excessively, I'm not having a good time. So that's my biggest con, and the reason that I didn't give this book a 5 star. I just couldn't handle the miscommunication trope. So I gave this book 4.25 stars, which I mean is still a solid rating, but that miscommunication trope really hurt it. Lastly, I actually got another arc, and I'm not going to say really anything on it because I didn't particularly enjoy it, and I don't want to inhibit anyone from maybe forming their own opinions on that book after it's been released. And it doesn't get released until October, so I won't be talking on that one. But if you'd like to keep an eye out for that book in my review, you can certainly go over to my Fable and keep an eye out for it. It's going to release, I believe, somewhere like mid October. So there's that. All right, so that's all the books that I read. So let's get into the stats. So on audio, I listened to 8.5 books. And the reason for that point 0.5 is because I listened and read Accomplice to the Villain. I immersed read it. So I had the book open while I was listening to it and just following along. And then Kindle books, I read eight books. And then on, well, physically, I read 2.5 books, again with that point 0.5. So total, I read 19 books, which I think is a solid reading month, to be honest. I think I read 20 books last month, so, well, 20 books in July. So we're averaging about 20 books, which I think is solid for me. I was never averaging this amount of books last year, so I've definitely upped my reading game. And I really have audiobooks to thank for that, so appreciate that. But anyways, let's get into my most loved book, which was Dream On by Jennifer Hartman, and my most anticipated read for the month of September, which is going to surprise, I feel like, some people. I don't know. Maybe. That book is Psycho Shifters by Jasmine Mass or Mass. I think it's Mass. And I'm so excited about this book because I have just been reading a lot of contemporary or just like a lot of like MF books, and I have been hankering for a fantasy reverse harem so hard. So I am so excited to get into this series, and it's very popular. Like not in like book talk circles, but like on like Goodreads and everything. People seem to really love this series. So I'm really excited to get into it. I'm foaming at the mouth. But anyways, that is all, guys. I hope you guys had a great reading month in August. Wow, words. Great reading month in August. Let me know what your favorite read was or your least favorite read of August was in the comments. I'd love to know, love to talk about it. But that is all, guys. Until next time, Read on, my bookish friends.